Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we are back with another of these brand new Beasts of the Mesozoic figures. The newest round of Beasts of the Mesozoic, including species like this, the Dilophosaurus, as well as the Allosaurus and Deinonychus and stuff. That has all begun shipping from Creative Beast Studios. So if you were looking forward to those and you have pre-ordered them, they should be to you, if not already, sometime very soon. But as you can see, again, we are checking out the Dilophosaurus today, and this is one that I have been really looking forward to because it's a Dilophosaurus and a super articulated version at that. What could honestly be cooler than that? And you can see, as far as the packaging goes, you've got a nice window area where you can get kind of a sneak peek of the figure itself, as well as some really nice artwork here on the packaging. I will say, one thing that I'm not super excited about straight out of the gate that I can see is the striping and the crest. I feel like that striping and the crest looks a little more generic than I'm used to when it comes to the Beasts of the Mesozoic, like what you see here on the package art. That looks a lot better, where they have like the brown kind of overtaking the lower part of the crest and then kind of striping up. And I just wish they would have done it more like that. But it still looks pretty cool. Again, the Dilophosaurus itself looks really nice. You've got the species name, the scale, and everything down here. If you turn to the side, of course, Beasts of the Mesozoic. And then if we go to the back, you can see some very cool images of the dinosaur as well as information, and then of course down here showing off the other figures that are out currently, some of the other figures anyway, most of which are from this wave. Again, with the Zuniceratops, the albino version, you've also got the Allosaurus, the Deinonychus, and Smilodon, and then of course the Utahraptor, but that one was released prior. So super excited for this one. Let's pop the box open and check it out. Of course, you've got some of the stuff that you usually get, like one thing here explaining the stand and everything and how you can, swap out the feet and all of that fun stuff. Something that's always important to read, especially if it's your first Beasts of the Mesozoic figure. And then we also have the gorgeous artwork here in card form. And you can see our Dilophosaurus standing nice and proud with some pterosaurs flying behind it. And then if we take a look at the back, you can see a little dino toy photography, as well as some information on the figure and dinosaur itself. So, as always, a beautiful card. Also contained within is the stand, which you can see. Again, it's basically the same type of stand that I had shown off in my Allosaurus review, but again, at a much smaller size. It's not nearly as large as the one that we had for the Allosaurus. And we've also got alternate feet, which you can see. You've got more of like closed-toed version and then kind of like bent toes, as the dinosaur would be like walking and stuff. So always really fun to have these, especially if you are planning like a specific diorama or pose for your dinosaur. These replacement feet are absolutely going to help you to achieve that, which is definitely, again, important in the grand scheme of things when creating a diorama. And then, of course, the most important piece of the puzzle would be our Dilophosaurus itself. And, here straight out of the packaging, it is definitely one beautiful looking Dilophosaurus as far as the sculpt goes. The colors are also nicely done, nicely chosen, and for the most part nicely applied, I would say. Overall, it looks really, really good. Again, the only thing that I think my gripe would be those kind of stripes there on the crest, and even the stripes kind of moving through the mouth area, but specifically the crest stripes look a little bit unnatural, I guess you could say. But outside of that, I think everything else looks really nice on the figure. So without further ado, let's jump to a closer look and we'll check it out from there. So starting up here at the head sculpt of the Dilophosaurus, honestly, I don't know that I've ever seen a more beautiful looking head sculpt for a Dilophosaurus in my life. That is absolutely gorgeous in every way. The fine detail also looks really quite nice. You've got some fairly fine skin texture, and you can see they brought that detail out in the skin really nicely with what appears to be like a dark wash. You can see kind of like some darker tones creeping there in and out of all of the cracks and crevices of the skin of our Dilophosaurus. You can also see the nostrils sculpted out, and the fact that our Dilophosaurus features lips, which is always fun. We've got a good bit of variation of color with like some orangish browns and like some light yellowish sort of tones, and then you've got, of course, those dark browns that stripe up into the crest, as well as some variations of blues for the crest, making sure that it looks nice and striking. And you can also see what appears to be maybe like a light dry brushing of a darker tone that's run over the crest as well, which again helps to, I think, it just improve the overall visual and realism of the figure. The striping, though, up into the crest, as I mentioned, I'm not a big fan of that. I just feel like it looks a little bit more like paint rather than actual body color. Same deal for the stripes down here. Like, it looks okay. It just doesn't look incredibly impressive. You can see some more blues, like some lighter blues as you move back here near the eye area, kind of spotting and leading back toward the neck. The eye area does have that black that kind of runs down and circles around the eye, and it does, again, because there is that darker tone sort of circling around it, it does pop really nicely right there, which is a plus. You do, of course, have an articulated jaw for the Dilophosaurus, as you would expect to, and wow, is that ever super cool. I was not prepared for the inside of the mouth to be such a really neat-looking bluish tone for the Dilophosaurus, and that looks absolutely awesome. There looks to be maybe like a different wash, like a darker wash that's been applied to the inside of the mouth as well. We can see the tongue sculpted out right there, and obviously that tongue articulates. You can just see it's already in a different spot. We can move the tongue over to the side if we really want to, but it's always fun to have an articulated tongue. You can see the teeth as well are sculpted pretty nicely, painted pretty nicely. They're really quite small because, of course, the Dilophosaurus isn't gigantic. You can definitely see the teeth on the upper jaw a lot nicer, and again, how each and every tooth is sculpted and painted really, really precisely as per usual. There's also a really nice gloss coat for the inside of the mouth, making everything have that saliva-like look, and the jaw works perfectly. But as you move back, you can start to see some of the articulated joints moving down through the course of the neck. There are quite a few right there. You can also see that we've got a little bit of variation of color as we have kind of like that yellowish tone leading back and striping here through the side of the neck that also has been kind of dry brushed over not only the upper part here, which you can see it dry brushed over the black area of the dinosaur, you can also see it dry brushed here over the course of the throat and that orangish brown tone that we have, just giving it quite a bit of difference in color. You can also see some browns have been applied up here into the back of the neck. We can see that the feathering starts to pick up there on the back of the neck of our Dilophosaurus as we move down. There's also a bluish dry brushing for a very small portion of the top of the head right there, which I almost passed right by and didn't notice. But when it comes to the articulated joints in the neck, we'll get a feel for how they work. Wow, that is really nice. That's super, super smooth articulation. Like, look at the mobility in the neck right there. That definitely gives you a really nice, oh, we can get that pretty far, really nice left or right turn. Let's go ahead and check out the up and down aspect. So that's looking up, really quite nice, really quite high up. And then looking down is always like an issue for articulated figures. It's just such a hard thing to accomplish. And as you can see, it can look down. It doesn't look down super far, but most figures like this, like most articulated figures, really can't get too much motion in a downward position. I think that looks pretty good, but that's like, you know, basically where the legs come in. You just bend the legs, and now the Dilophosaurus will be like basically sniffing the ground or enjoying a meal. But the left and right is super impressive, as is even the upward motion. And again, those joints work really quite nicely. Moving down, we can see the skin texture here on the underside of the neck and throat looks quite nice. Same deal as we move up here into the back of the neck. But the further down into the body we go, we start to see feathering pick up. And once we're actually down here into the main body of the dinosaur, we are loaded with feathers. And you can see they're basically kind of just wavy, almost sort of emu-like feathering, and you can also see that on top of the black tone, we start to have like a grayish tone creep in the further back into the body we go, and it's actually really subtle as far as the way it like kind of starts to show up. Like, you can see it just gradually transitions in, and then by the time you reach the hip area, you can see it's really impressive, like really dominant when it comes to the color back here. It also really highlights the feathers, which you can see is definitely a nice thing. Moving down into the arms, early on into the darker tones of the body, we don't have that light dry brushing up here. We basically just have the black tones. There is a very, very light dry brushing of like a light gray, but it's not quite as bright as the gray that we have up here. But again, moving down, you can see the feathers lead down into the hand, but once we reach the hand, we transition back to that kind of orangish brown tone and a mixture of that and yellows down here, sort of like basically the way the colors look through the course of the entire body. We can also see the nails are painted with a nice glossy black, which is a plus. And again, we have articulation in the arms, forward and back, also out away from the body, which you can see. And then you've got the elbow articulation, forward and back, and can also swivel. There you go. There's a little bit of sloppiness as far as the paint right there on mine, but it's not too bad. And you also have wrist articulation, which you can see swiveling, you know, through the course of the figure. I don't know if it goes up and down. Yes, definitely seems to. So you have quite a bit of articulation right there in the arms and hands, arms and wrists of our Dilophosaurus. Moving back, you do also have midsection articulation, which is actually pretty nice and smooth. You can see that works pretty good. And then also up and down, not a whole lot in that direction, but left and right is really quite nicely done. Leading back, you can again see how impressive that lighter tone is. It's more of like a khaki once you lead back here, or a light tannish tone, and you can see the leg looks really good. The feather detail looks really good. You can even make out some of the muscle definition right there. We do, of course, have leg articulation in the hip, basically forward and back, and then does kind of move out away from the body just a little bit. As you lead down, once you basically reach the knee area, you do end up back into a skin texture for the Dilophosaurus, which again looks really nice. As you lead down, you have like a mixture of like the reddish or orangish browns and the yellowish browns moving through, which looks really cool, honestly. And then you've got some beautifully sculpted feet for the Dilophosaurus. Nice scoots moving down the toes, very bird-like. And then you've got some nicely painted and sculpted nails, again with a nice glossy black. You've also got the dew claw over there. Leading down, you have articulation in the knee, which is incredibly stiff and is actually not moving at all. But it's very obvious, like you can see the joint back there. It should go forward and back. It's just not going to right now. It actually should swivel as well, I think. There, you can see it swiveling. It's definitely just really stiff. It's straight out of the packaging. That's not a surprise to me at all. You also have a spot right here, forward and back, and can also swivel. And then again, same deal down here. You can go forward and back and also swivel. So you've got quite a bit as far as the articulation in the legs as well. And then leading back here toward the tail, I love that every so often you see a little area of scruffy feathering. Like you can see just a little bundle of feathers right here. You see more kind of following along the sides of the tails. You've got some up here. You can see just like little areas where the feathers are kind of like roughed up, which I feel like would definitely be something you would see on a real feathered dinosaur. Definitely something I see on birds that are, you know, similar to this, like, you know, emus and stuff. And even I have ducks. Even my ducks at times have kind of like scruffy feathers here and there that kind of just get roughed up as they're moving around. So definitely a nice realistic touch. You do also have, of course, articulation in the tail right here. Can go up, down, left, right, and swivel. You've got another spot right here which can do all of those same things. Again, up, down, left, right, and swivel. And then you've got one more spot right here as you lead out, which again does the same thing. All over the place, can swivel, and then this area is a wire, so of course you can pose this further and bend that however you would like. But as you move down along the underside of the tail, again you've got the mixtures of reddish or orangish browns, and then again yellows moving through. You can see the scale detail looks really quite nice. And then as you lead out, the feathers taper off about halfway out into the tail, or maybe even like a third of the way out into the tail. And then you have a striping with two different variations of browns that pick up and then lead along the course of the tail before one of the variations of browns overtakes a large part of the tip of the tail, and then we end with a black tip for the final area of the tail. And again, it gives it just that little bit of flashiness out there, I would say. And then once you turn the figure around, it's going to look the same pretty much on both sides. Of course, being a fully posable, fully articulated figure, I really wouldn't expect to see much of a difference on one side compared to the other, which again is a good thing. Definitely makes sure that the figure is nice and consistent on both sides. Now, I personally have no concerns over this. I'm confident that it will stand, but just in case you wanted to see if it would stand on its own without the base or anything, there you go. The Dilophosaurus is standing really quite nicely. Obviously, we could get it into a more natural or more appealing position, but it's standing regardless, and I did not expect anything less, especially considering I've had much larger figures from the beasts of the Mesozoic, like the Allosaurus and everything, standing fairly recently, so I wasn't worried about this one and whether or not it would stand. As far as a size goes, lengthwise, you were looking at about just a hair under 15 inches, or about 38 centimeters, and then for a height, 4¼ inches, or almost like 11 centimeters on the dot. For a size comparison, There is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Dilophosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A Human Being next to our Beasts of the Mesozoic Dilophosaurus. And as you can see again, it's got a pretty good size to it. It's by no means a large figure. Especially in the length department, it is really quite impressive. When it comes to other Dilophosaurus models and figures, I don't really have too many that can compete with this one because there just aren't all that many Dilophosaurus out there. I think if you took the Mattel versions, obviously we have more of like your standard sized Mattel Dilophosaurus right here, which is way smaller. But if you took the closest, I would say, to the size of this one, it would have to be like the Amber Collection Dilophosaurus. I don't have that one here, unfortunately, to compare, but that would definitely be, I would say, very similar in size to the Beasts of the Mesozoic version. But for another size comparison of a figure that is very similar in size, we have the Tyrannosaur series Electrosaurus, which you can see is very, very close to the same size as the Dilophosaurus. The Dilophosaurus is definitely a bit longer, but when it comes to like the same type of body mass and stuff, you can see again, these two are very similarly sized. So if you take some of the smaller Tyrannosaur series like the juvenile T-Rex and stuff like that, I feel like you'll have a pretty good sense of the size of this Dilophosaurus. And then for one more comparison with the other figure that I have already reviewed here on the channel from this wave, we've got the Allosaurus here, which you can see is very obviously a whole lot larger than the Dilophosaurus. So this brand new Beasts of the Mesozoic 1/18th scale super articulated Dilophosaurus is gorgeous as I expected it to be. I never expect anything less when it comes to the Beasts of the Mesozoic. I really couldn't come up with anything else that I think would compare well with this. If you happen to have like an idea of something you may have wanted to see compared with this, I could of course make a video, throw it up in the shorts section or something to give you that comparison. But I feel like, you know, basically showing off the fact that it's the size range of like the smaller, not the super small Tyrannosaurs, but like the smaller versions like the Dilophosaurus and young T-Rex and stuff like the juvenile Rex really is basically the best description I can give you as far as a size, and definitely the best comparison I could have given you. But you can see again through the course of the entire thing, it is absolutely awesome, and it's just generally really nice to see a Dilophosaurus with feathers. I think the only one that I can ever remember ever being out previously with a Dilophosaurus having feathers was the Bullyland version, and very clearly this is way better than that. Sculpt-wise, though, it is fantastic. It sports some really nice-looking skin texture, really nice feather detail, and overall, a very, very nice-looking Dilophosaurus. Color-wise, I think the, coloration they've chosen for this, the color scheme, was definitely nicely done. It's very nicely chosen, very nicely applied for the most part to the figure as well, and of course looks extremely natural as far as what I would expect to see. You've got like the more naturalistic kind of darker tones on the body, which would help of course to conceal the Dilophosaurus if it were sneaking up on prey, but you also have the elements of flashiness, like the crest specifically is one area you would expect to see some form of flashiness, maybe for like attracting a mate or something like that. So of course, I would like to see that. As far as brighter, kind of more flashy coloration, but at the same time, they've given it that kind of brighter, flashier colors, but it's not that bright. Like, it still looks more natural, in my opinion. The only area that doesn't look that natural to me would be the striping in the crest. I feel like that just looks a little bit more like paint rather than body color, but it's just a small area of the figure overall, and it doesn't look that bad. I just feel like it could have been a little bit nicer. But, as far as the figure goes, everything looks really good past that point. Of course, you've got the really nice areas of feathers that have some nice dry brushing techniques to help amp up the realism and just in general show you how nice the feathers are. And of course, the skin texture has various tones of colors, washes and stuff like that too as well, bring out the detail perfectly. And you've got mountains of articulation, as you always do when it comes to these figures, and it's super, super smooth. Of course, some areas right now are a little stiff, like the knees and stuff for mine are definitely stiff at the moment, but, you've got other areas like the neck is incredibly smooth and very impressive. So overall, this is definitely a beautiful figure from the Beasts of the Mesozoic, and in my opinion, an absolute must-have. So if you are interested in picking one up for yourself, I will include a link in the description to where you can grab one right now on the Creative Beast Studio website. So make sure you do that, and of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.